have my notes right here. It's just, who am I? Well, I'm an artist. I do the YouTube videos. I DJ. I do graphics. I do traditional art like drawing and stuff like that. But right now I'm in school for graphic design. I am a sports fan. I've always been a sports fan my whole life, and I've always had an opinion about sports, and now you get to hear them via my voice in these lovely podcasts. Some of my favorite teams for like soccer would be like Arsenal. That's a big name. I really like Barcelona. Another big one would be for MLS would be the New England Revolution, even though I follow the San Jose Earthquakes more just because they're affiliated with Reno 1868. My soccer background, basically, I think it's like a lot of people, especially my age. When I was a little kid, I played a little bit in like learn to play type leagues, and then as I grew up, I wasn't really like a super fan of it, but I did know that the sport existed, and I did play it casually sometimes. Then that kind of changed in 2012 when the U.S. national soccer team was doing really well, and I think that's the point in time when a lot of people started to pay attention to U.S. soccer and soccer as a whole in America. Then Reno announced that they were getting a team, and to me that was kind of like cool because that was like the closest thing to hockey that we had here in Reno, and that's why I was really interested in the beginning. And then we had some friendly matches over there at the ballpark, and I just had a lot of fun at those matches, and I didn't realize what the soccer culture in America really was like, or what going to a game really was like, until after that. But going to the game and after the game, I was really hooked on soccer in America. Joining the brigade was a really easy choice for me, especially after I went to those friendly matches and saw them there. I knew about Ultras culture in the past through YouTube and things like that, with groups like Copa 90 who create videos about like the Ultras culture and stuff like that. And it was really just an easy choice because I didn't really think that there were a lot of fans out there like me who like to cheer and yell and do all that kind of stuff, because in hockey they're not really organized. They're really spread apart across all different parts of the stadium and things like that makes it almost seem like you as an individual are the only one doing any kind of cheering or chanting or anything like that for most of the game. So then we had the first game. Reno 1868 had their first game. Going into the first season for Reno 1868, I didn't think I was going to go to every game. I thought I was going to just be a casual fan. But that was also my first time being a part of the brigade and actually being in an Ultras group. So that really just changed the way I experienced the game to a large degree. So ever since then, I've been just going to the games consistently. And then I started making the videos about the brigade that first game as well. I didn't initially think, especially going into the game, thinking that I was going to be a casual fan. I didn't think that I was going to come out of that, making YouTube videos about it and having a whole channel just dedicated to this team and all that, and being that devoted as a fan. Once that game started and we were getting into that game, I recorded some videos because, everybody has their phone, so I just used my phone to record the first All for Our City video. Yeah, like I said, I didn't plan on recording that video, and the video turned out amazing, and now we're looking at going into the third season of me recording those videos. It's just been amazing. I mean, I didn't even think initially that I was going to put those videos out. I knew I was going to record it, but I mean, even at that, I didn't know I was going to record until I got to the stadium. Then I was like, okay, maybe I'll record this. This is awesome, I really want to show people what I got to see my first couple games going to the friendly matches that were there, and being there at that point, I really wanted to just share my experience with the world, and essentially that's where we're at now. The 2017 season was amazing. It was our first season. It was our best season, even though we got kicked out of the playoffs in the first round. We had some amazing players on the team, and the team did really well on the pitch. The fans were really amazing in the stands. The brigade was, unbelievable at that point. The experience of going to the games has only gotten better from there. During the 2017 season is when I first decided that I wanted to play soccer. That wasn't the best choice because I suck at soccer, but that's definitely something that I thought I wanted to do. And So I did it, and I'm still doing that. It is indoor soccer. It's over there at the Reno Sports Dome. It's a lot of fun. It's co-ed. It's lowest division, and even though it's lowest division, we don't win a lot of games. We lose majority of most of our games. We're in second to last place right now. And as far as that goes, I started that in 2017, and then I played again in 2018, and then in 2018 I decided to create soccer videos based around the games that we did play at the Sports Dome. In 2019 I started playing again, and I'm continuing to record those videos now. So now I just want to talk about the 2018 season a little bit. The 2018 season was just an amazing season. For me, I went into that season just wanting to step up what I did the previous season, continuing doing the videos, making the videos more interesting, and really just growing that. I created this YouTube channel that year specifically for the All for Our City videos. The team had a great year. They went to the second round of the playoffs, got to go to Salt Lake City for that playoff game. That was amazing. I got to travel a lot more with the brigade last year, and I really do hope to continue to do that. And one of the biggest things to happen last year was the addition of the Las Vegas Lights to the USL. So Las Vegas and Reno could continue their rivalry in soccer. This rivalry was named the Silver State Cup, and those were some amazing games during the season. Got to travel to Vegas just for that. That second to last game here in Reno, where Reno scored in extra time to win the game, that was just amazing, and it's just been wonderful to experience that. Got to go to Fresno late last season. That was fun. Those fans are really nice, really accepting of away fans. Yeah, moving forward, moving into the 2019 season, it's just going to be an amazing season again. I know that. I know we already have some great players coming back, and I know we have some great new additions coming here to play for us, and I just have the best of hopes. And it's always like that at this time of the year. We don't have like a full roster or anything like that. We can only speculate as to what the roster is going to be. We can only speculate as to how good the team is going to do, especially since the league reformatted it. Or the league has a new format for this year, and there's a lot more teams playing now than there was 2 years ago or even a year ago. And so it's just going to be one of those things where I'm excited for it, and I can't wait for it to happen. And I love that we're going to start the season off by playing San Jose in Reno, and that the San Jose Ultras are going to be here, and all the players from San Jose are going to be here, and their coach is going to start his MLS career here in Reno. And so that's something exciting that we can say happened here in Reno. So it's just things like that I'm excited for this year. Well, what I want this podcast to be, just looking at my notes, I don't want it to be like 1868 Weekly. 1868 Weekly is the already existing Reno 1868 podcast. The guys over there do a wonderful job with that podcast. I really like it. I listen to it all the time, and it's a solid podcast. One thing I think that's really interesting about that podcast, though, is that it doesn't feel like it's a fan perspective podcast. It really feels more of like a reporter type podcast, which is fine. That's just a different style of podcast. It's what they want to do. I do recommend that you check out their podcast and all of that. Unlike their podcast, I will be covering more than just Reno 1868. I'll be covering teams like Western Nevada FC Coyotes, I think is their name now. It used to be Western Nevada FC. I still call them Western Nevada FC. I don't think they should have changed their name, but they're like the Coyotes FC or something now. But I'll be covering them as well. I'll be covering the Nevada women's soccer team, just because they're right on par with being one of the highest levels of team here in Reno. And I went to a couple of their games last year. Women's soccer is definitely different than men's soccer, but it is something that I think I do want to get into. And so I will be covering them. And I'm not sure if Reno Liberty FC is still around here in Reno, but I do want to cover them. And let's see, I have it written down here who I'm going to cover. San Jose, obviously you want to cover San Jose because San Jose Earthquakes are the affiliate for Reno 1868 FC. The Nevada Wolfpack, already talked about them. Western Nevada FC, already talked about them. TMCC. Now, TMCC is going to be getting a team. They're currently building a field that will have some seating, so it is like a smaller stadium. They're currently building that on their campus, and I believe their team is going to start next year, not this year, but next year. And then lastly, I will be talking about my indoor soccer team. I think that they do deserve a little bit of time on here, and I think that that can lead to some interesting content for this podcast. Another thing that's going to separate us from the other podcasts is talking about different topics. I want to be talking about things like how we come up with chants, like how do we get ready for games, how does the brigade do things, how do the new supporter groups see the brigade, and what the other supporter groups' perspectives are on soccer in our area and things like that. Plus, I want to just cover more fun topics like playing video games with some of the players and stuff like that. Like what are the players interested in and things like that. And lastly, the last thing is kind of a minor thing, but I think some of the opinions that I have are drastically different from 1868 Weekly, and I think that that is something that is going to really come out here on this podcast. So getting into the news, starting off with 1868 FC. Most of the 1868 FC news is mainly about the roster. They have a bunch of new signings that they really just started signing players in January, and they've made like a real big effort in January to sign a lot of players. And there are some key returning players and some non-returning players, but I don't want to talk about that. I really want to talk about that mainly in the next episode so I will be talking about the roster, but I do want to wait till the next episode to talk about the roster, not right now. What I do want to talk about in this episode, though, that is news related, is something that did happen recently, and that's the MLS Draft. Now, the MLS Draft is something that the MLS, essentially copied from the NHL, the NBA, the NFL. All major sports leagues in North America have a draft for the most part. I talked to a few people about the MLS Draft and my opinion on it, and basically my opinion on it is that it's useless. When you look at a lot of the players that come into the league, a lot of the players are coming up. A lot of players in that number one striker position, or the number one goal scorer position, or the number one defensive position, or the number one goalie position are coming in mid to late season. They're coming in after the European season is over. And that's really why I think the MLS Draft is kind of ridiculous, is that a lot of the guys who are getting drafted, they're not necessarily going into the MLS, especially not immediately. A lot of these guys are coming from college here in America, so they're not necessarily the best players in the world. Like for the NBA, when they draft players out of college, they're drafting from the best pool in the world, the best basketball players there are in the world. However, when they're doing that with the MLS, they're not necessarily doing that because most of them are from North America. Continue as to why it's kind of ridiculous is just that. The players that come in to the draft aren't exactly the starter type quality. So your top 11 players aren't necessarily going to be drafted or are not going to come from the draft. A lot of your top 11 players are going to come later on during the season. So that's kind of my opinion on it. And I've talked to a few other people about it, and they kind of share that same opinion, that the MLS Draft is kind of a little bit ridiculous because a lot of the players, they don't end up in the MLS. They end up playing in the USL, or they end up going to Europe or something like that. And we're the only soccer league in the world that has a draft. Makes it interesting, in my opinion, that, they can do a draft, but at the same time, it's like we're the only ones doing a draft. There's this big thing about transfers in soccer where anyone can be transferred and anyone can move anywhere, and players aren't really protected by like a draft. And I know guys in Europe start playing professionally when they're like 16, so having a draft really kind of doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because if you're going to get a great player, like one of your top 11 players, they're probably already playing somewhere, and you just have to draw them in some other way. Big names that I can say that came in after the draft are guys like David Beckham came into the MLS after the draft. He came over like as a free agent kind of deal. and Zlatan came in, as outside of the draft. He came from another league. So a lot of our top players in the MLS are definitely not being drafted. They're definitely coming from Europe, and it kind of makes the draft a little bit pointless. But it could just be the MLS draft could just be a cash grab. And if it is, they're not going to stop it. And if they're doing it to try to appeal more to a North American market, it's not 20 years ago. 20 years ago, they needed to do a lot more to appeal to a North American market. Now, post 2012, hey, people are now watching soccer. You don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to appeal to the North American market as much as you might have previously. So you don't need to be like hockey. You don't need to be like basketball or football or whatever. And in my opinion, soccer should try to be its own thing, and it should try to separate itself as much as possible. But it should also try to be as close to an internationally recognized and a global type league. Like right now, the MLS is really looked upon as a league where former stars go and play. Stars who are past their prime. Maybe in other leagues they would have retired, but in this league they're not going to retire. They're going to come over here and get like their last couple paychecks for like 5 years or whatever. Which to me, I don't think that the MLS should be doing that, but that's where the MLS is now, and having a draft with that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Going back to Reno 1868 News, I do want to talk about their schedule a little bit here. Obviously, our first game is against San Jose, and that's going to be an amazing game. Even though it's just a friendly game, it's going to be the first game where we get to see a lot of our new guys and a lot of our roster really being played out. And then our first game, regular season is March 9th, and that'll be against Orange County, which is a rematch of last year's second round of the playoffs where we did get knocked out by Orange County. So it'll be interesting to see how much both teams really improved or didn't improve too much, if the teams did or not, whatever, in this short off season. Calculating the off season's only 2.5 months, because we start up in February and whatnot. So it'll have only been like 3 months when they come back to that game, and that rematch is just a big rematch because, again, Orange County did knock us out of the playoffs, and we didn't really play that well in that game. So it'll be interesting to see if our guys, or how our guys do in that one. The 16th, we're playing Austin Bold. That's another home game. They did release the Austin Bold logo and all of that, and it's like a tree and stuff. And I've seen so many jokes about it just being a freeway, because I guess the traffic to their stadium or to their new stadium that they're trying to build so that they can be an MLS team is just awful. March 23rd, we're playing Fresno. That's another game I'm excited for because we're going to be traveling back to Fresno. And, people are like, oh, well, you're excited to travel to Fresno? And it's like, yeah, I kind of am. It was a really enjoyable experience last time going to Fresno. Not my most enjoyable away game experience, but it was really nice. All the fans that were there from Fresno were really nice. And the trip, it's always fun. The trips with the brigade are always fun. It's always fun when I get to travel with those guys. April 6th is another one I'm looking forward to. I'm looking at going at that one too. It's in Salt Lake, where they're playing the Real Monarchs, and that's a rematch of our first round playoff game. That was another fun away game. And that game too, we only won that one by a goal in extra time, which was an amazing goal. It was unbelievable. I didn't think we were going to score. I thought the game was going to go to overtime and then penalties and all that. And to be able to score like that was just amazing. April 20th will be our first game against New Mexico United, and that is at Greater Nevada Field. That's another one I'm excited for. I'm always excited to play new teams, see what the new team has to offer, and that sort of thing. And like last season, I was excited for St. Louis because that might be the one time that St. Louis came to Greater Nevada Field might be the only time that we ever play St. Louis ever in the history of Reno 1868. So that's a great game. And then the game right after that, they're going to be playing in New Mexico at El Paso Locomotive, which will be our first game against El Paso, which will be a great one. And then May 11th will be our first away game against Sacramento. First game against Sacramento, first away game against Sacramento. I can't wait to go back to Sacramento. It feels like our players are always playing their best when they end up in Sacramento. And I know last year that game in Sacramento was amazing because 3 goals in 5 minutes. That's legendary to be down by 2 going into the second half and then to score 3 goals in 5 minutes, like 15 minutes into the half. That's just amazing. And that was just a wonderful experience, and that was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do that again. Our first game against Las Vegas is a home game, and that's June 1st. Excited to kick off that series again. It'll be interesting to see if Las Vegas does good this year, because last year they were kind of like the worst team in the league, besides just being a joke, because, their nickname is the Emoji FC. So besides just being a joke, having like ridiculous colors for their team colors, having a ridiculous logo, besides being a very non-traditional club, they didn't perform really well last year, and I know some of the fans took it hard at some different points, and so it'll be interesting to see how well they do this year, and especially against us, because I really want us to keep the Silver State Cup here in Reno, and I think that we will. Looking at everything right now, I think that we will. June 29th, we're playing the Sacramento Republic again. That one's a home game. Can't wait for that. Home games against Sacramento Republic are way better than away games, in my opinion. One, because it's a home game, but two, because we always do the drumline thing where both where their supporter groups, their traveling supporter groups, and our supporter groups basically do a drum line with each other, and get in each other's faces and kind of do that kind of thing. And that's a lot of fun. That always is a lot of fun to do that. Fresno's coming here September 7th. And then the last game that I think I'm excited for, that I would say is a don't miss one. Obviously, our last home game is against El Paso. I think that's our first home game against El Paso, but that's obviously a don't miss. Obviously, if you don't get any other games this year, I think that the Sacramento Republic game at Greater Nevada Field or the Las Vegas Lights game at Greater Nevada Field are the games to go to. Las Vegas doesn't always have a good traveling group, but Sacramento definitely does, and it brings a really great atmosphere into the ballpark. Last game of the year, obviously, against El Paso Locomotive. So that's something that's worth looking forward to, but I think also that this doesn't even include the Open Cup. If we do good in the Open Cup and we can get a home game against an MLS team, that will be amazing. Because unlike the MLS game against San Jose coming up here February 9th, an MLS game in the Open Cup actually means something, because it is an elimination game, and that is definitely something that will tell us where we compare with like the MLS, and that's just something that would be amazing if it happens. And then the only other thing that's not on the schedule currently, and I know that they did it the last 2 years, they've had 3 Mexican League games at Greater Nevada Field. 2 of them were friendlies against 1868, and one of them was not. But that is definitely something else that I'm looking forward to. I think that those games are definitely don't miss, even though they're a little bit pricey. They're definitely a don't miss. Just because it just brings a really great atmosphere with all the Hispanic fans. They bring a lot of traveling supporters, and they're generally pretty friendly, the away fans. And I know the last 2 years it's just been a ton of fun with both the teams, and I hope that they continue to do that with a match this year against 1868. So the top away games to go to, obviously Vegas, Fresno, and Sacramento. Not in that order. I think Sacramento is the best away game to go to, and then possibly Vegas. If you can really afford do Vegas, make a weekend out of it. That can be a lot of fun for anybody. And then the other one is obviously Fresno. They have really nice supporters and really nice fans, so that's one that's worth going to, I think. And those are all definitely away games I will be trying to go to. The other away game that I'm going to be trying to go to will be the Salt Lake away game. And then I may try to go to the New Mexico away games in El Paso and in, what's the other one? I can't think of what the other one is right now. It's El Paso, and the other one just says New Mexico United. So I don't know where New Mexico United is. I think they're in Albuquerque. So if they are in Albuquerque, that's definitely something I do want to go and see. And then another one I want to do, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to do, is Colorado Springs and Portland. It was one I almost got to do last year. I know some people were going, and they were going to Portland, and they were going to do that, and I was kind of like one of those, if you have room for me, I'm going kind of deals. And at the last minute, it just didn't happen. But I still really want to go to Portland. I've heard that they have a great soccer community there. And I believe they play in the same stadium as their MLS team. I could be wrong about that, but I know that their MLS team is currently in the process of making renovations to their stadium. So I've researched the stadium, and I know it's a really historic stadium. Just looking at the schedule one more time, Seattle is another team that I would like to go see, but again, that's a real stretch for me, even if I'm going to go do that. But obviously I go to these, I do the All for Our City videos, and I'll try to get interviews from like home supporter fans and stuff like that. So, well, that's something that I think I want to do too with this podcast, is get more away fans or fans from other teams, their opinions on things like traveling to Reno, or the fact that we'll travel as far as like Portland or Vegas with like a ton of fans, yet they won't travel here kind of deals. I think something that fans need to be aware of this year is that there's going to be 3 supporter groups. It's no longer just the brigade. There will be 2 other supporter groups. I'm going to try to secure interviews with some of the leaders of these other supporter groups. But I definitely think that fans going to the game, it's going to be something that's going to be new to a lot of fans. I know there's a lot of fans that are fans of baseball, and soccer has a completely different atmosphere than baseball, and the fans are completely different. But I know that a lot of people will go to a soccer game, especially for the first time, or casual fans, and they expect it to be like a baseball game except for a different sport and stuff like that. But it's definitely a lot more rowdy and a lot different atmosphere, and I don't think that people are necessarily prepared for the change in the atmosphere. And so I do think it is important that people do note that there are going to be more supporter groups, because these supporter groups are going to be in areas where there are more casual fans. Basically, the way I see it is, last year the way it went was you had the brigade, and next to the brigade were mostly season ticket holders or groups of fans. So they understood going into the game that the diehard fans are right here. That changed a little bit towards the end of the season, as there was a supporter group over by the grass. They're now called the Douglas Alley Renegades. They just came up with that name during the off season, and I think that's a great name. Like over there's a lot more casual fans, and where the other group is going to sit, there's probably going to be a lot more casual fans. And the problem that could occur with that is the casual fans don't necessarily like the diehard fans. The casual fans like to complain and things like that. And that's just something that I saw at the end of last season with the Douglas Alley Renegades, is they went somewhere where there was basically only casual fans, and they were not prepared for another supporter group to be standing there and cheering and chanting and taunting the players and that kind of thing. So I think it's something that people need to be more aware of. I think people need to, especially casual fans or people who are coming to the games for the first time, you can't expect it to be like baseball. You can't expect it to be like anything else. Soccer, there are a lot of diehard fans for soccer, and they're not just going to stay in one area because that's just not how it works, and that's an unrealistic expectation. And I'm not sure that anybody really has that expectation, but I mean, you're talking people when they're sitting on the grass, they're, at least at the start of last year, they were opposite end of the supporters. So you can't really hear the brigade as much over there as you can if you're in section 102 or if you're even in the net or whatever. You still can hear them, especially when they're being really loud, but it's one of those things where I think that it's an important issue to bring up. The new supporter groups are an important issue in my opinion, and it's definitely something I will be keeping an eye on this season. Something else that I want to talk about real quickly that I've been talking about these last couple of weeks with some of the people that I know is how our MLS affiliation really affects our roster. We've gone through it for 2 years. The first year I wasn't really I wasn't fully aware of what was going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to be like baseball where you have a lot of roster effect, or you have a lot of roster rules as to who can come up and when they can come up and stuff like that. I thought it was going to be more like hockey where guys would come down for one game and then go back up. But our first year, we got to keep basically most of our guys. San Jose played basically had their team before the season started, which was nice for us. But then it changed last year. It did become more like hockey where guys were going up and down all the time, and there was that. And last week's episode of 1868, they did a great interview with Eric with Eric Edelstein, who is the president of the ballpark, and they talked a little bit about this. This year is going to be different than last year because I think we're going to get some guys back possibly who played for us our first year or who were bench guys last year who are still on contract. We might get those guys here in Reno, and that wouldn't be too bad to get some of those. I like having guys on our roster who have MLS experience because that brings a lot to the table. I remember last year Hopino, I believe, went up for a few games, came back, and when he came back, the team played completely differently. The team played more as a unit. The team played more together. The team played more like an MLS team would, or more like a higher league side would, which was really nice to see. And I mean, we completely dominated when that happened. So it is nice to see guys who do have that MLS experience come down. Other things with the affiliation that affect our roster or is going to affect us this year, obviously San Jose having the new coach is going to affect, and we've already seen this because guys like Hopino are gone, but we see what we're seeing is basically you're not going to stay in Reno if San Jose doesn't think that you can develop into a player for them. That's basically what we saw, or what we're looking at right now. So if San Jose's coach doesn't think that you can pan out and play for San Jose, then they might not want you. Then you might not continue to play for Reno, that you might not get those offers and things like that. And that's what it looks like, at least from an outsider perspective. Yeah, that's basically it about our affiliation with San Jose. I personally like the affiliation with San Jose. And it's definitely something I could see MLS doing, even if they added in promotion relegation, having affiliate teams. What I would see as an affiliate team is like if you're an affiliate team, you just can't be promoted into the same level as the top team, even though the top team can be relegated to the same level as the affiliate team. And I would say that if they have promotion relegation, which would be really nice if they had it, that is definitely something that they could do. I mean, they could even set up a secondary league for what would be like reserve teams, which would be affiliate teams that are owned by the top team, I think, and then just making a clear separation between what an affiliate team and what a reserve team is would be amazing. One more thing, kind of like the last thing in 1868 news, is the season scarf design. That was something that came out a while ago, and I did want to start this podcast way before now, but it's something that came up a while ago, and I just wanted to touch on it really quickly. No, the design isn't a good design. The design is way too busy. Things are off center. None of the designs were actually designed by anyone at the ballpark. So it brings up some issues with that. But I've seen some other designs with people at the ballpark. As I am a designer, I get into that sometimes with some of the guys at the ballpark. We talk about different things. But one of the things that comes up with talking about design is just everything is just too busy with soccer. It's fine if it's busy with baseball. Baseball design is really busy itself. However, soccer design is more modern. It's more simplistic in its design. And I really just don't think that the ballpark gets that sometimes. And some of that is that the ballpark might not necessarily understand who their target audience is. I know a lot of, and I mean, this is coming from an outside perspective, but I do know a lot of, not a lot, but I do know some people who I talk to all the time about different designs and things like that, especially for sports. And they go to the soccer games and stuff like that. They really felt like last year the team or the front office was out of touch as far as design goes with their fan base. So that made it rather, that makes it rather difficult in my opinion for marketing and things like that. But it is a poorly designed scarf, unfortunately. But at the same time, that's, from what I understand, that's the direction that the ballpark wants to continue to go into, even though I've heard from several people that they're going in basically the wrong direction. I've heard that from fans. I've heard that from people working at the ballpark. But ultimately, it's not my choice. It's not our choice. It's their choice. And it's one of those things where you can buy it, you don't buy it, whatever. But I know that like some of the other things that are designed similarly to that have not sold and do not sell and do not go or over well with soccer fans. So I think that that's something that's there. I don't really want to get into it too much, though. Kind of one of the last things I want to talk about here with this podcast is the indoor soccer team. We played our second game on Sunday. We're 0-2 now, and if you haven't seen that, go check out the video. The video should be out by now. Check out the first week as well, see where our team's going with that. But we lost again, and it was kind of, in my opinion, it was a disappointing loss. I know our goalkeeper was pretty upset. He started punching things and was really just mad about how the team played overall. But in my opinion, we just got outworked, and it's a sucky feeling to get outworked. I mean, it's one thing you lose, but you worked hard and you played hard, and and it's one thing to do the same thing, work hard, play hard, lose, and know you lost because you're not good enough and because you just got outworked. So we definitely have a lot that we need to work on still. Obviously, a lot of us haven't played together. I don't think, unless I'm just the only new guy, but I don't think a lot of us have really played together too much. And we're going up against teams that have played together for years and guys who have played together, since like their whole lives, guys who have played their whole lives and stuff like that. So for a lot of us, I know we've only picked it up in the last few years for a few of us. So it's kind of one of those things where we know as individuals we have a lot to work on, but I think that we know as a team that we have a lot to work on. And in our last game, it was just us getting outworked, and being outworked is just a sucky feeling. None of the fouls were being called, but I mean, that's nothing new for the league. We only got a handful of fouls like the whole game, even though were some really nasty fouls. And I even saw a few times where fouls should have been called sooner, but the referee was looking at playing advantage, or at least it looked like he was looking at playing advantage to one of the two teams, but the advantage didn't work, so he calls the foul. But I think honestly we just got outworked. Can't really blame the ref when you're getting outworked. We got shut out, so that's not good in my opinion. And one of the key areas where we really needed to work on was our midfield. Our midfield was lacking the whole game. It looked like to me, nobody really wanted to play midfield too much. And those who were playing midfield were not coming back to play defense, or not going back and either not wanting to come back and play defense, two in which if you're playing midfield, that's a crucial thing. It looked like we were trying to play 2-1-3, or was kind of what we're doing. It's 6-on-6, so a lot of teams do the 3-3 or the 2-1-3. So we were trying to do the 2-1-3. We're talking about different strategies going into next week. We're not in last place, thankfully. I think our goal differential saved us from not being in last place, but we are playing the last place team this week. We're playing Orange Crush, so that'll be a fun game. It's an early game. Early being like it's like around 5:45 or something like that. So it's definitely one of those games where we all want to get together and we want to discuss strategy beforehand. I know guys were talking about that today. Where it's definitely, I think winning at all is going to be a challenge for us, because I don't think that we have any real number one skill type players. I think we can work, and if we work together and we have the strategy going and we're working hard, I think we really can win this next upcoming game. And I do say that it's going to be a challenge because, I don't think going into the game it's going to be an easy game. And I think even if we come out of it with a win, I don't think it's going to be one of those wins where we didn't really have to fight for. I think if we want to win this game, we're going to have to fight for it. And I think that our guys are just going to have to work hard in this next week and work hard leading up to the game and then work hard in the game and things like that. And we'll just go from there. I'm pretty sure we're not making the playoffs, at least this season. I'm hoping next season we can just continue to improve, and I hope we do make the playoffs at some point this year. That's about it for the indoor soccer team. I think we could do good. I think we have the opportunity, and I think we have the ability. If we work hard, we can do it. But again, we have to work hard. And I know with a lot of people, it's hard to find time outside of actual game time to work out and to do other things. But I think that we can. And I am hopeful for the future for this team. This team, I think, has a lot of potential moving forward because we have been playing very competitive in our first two games. So I think if we can continue to play competitive, and I think if we can continue to work hard, and if we can just boost the little things, do better at the little things that we're already doing good at, and then work on the major areas that we need to work on, like midfield, like defense, like being generally more athletic, I think that we can win a couple games here. But that's it for this podcast. Thanks for listening. If you did listen all the way to the end, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this. I don't know how many people are going to care, to be honest. But if you did like it, please leave a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, or whatever social media this is posted on, or whatever media this is posted on, it, or wherever you heard this or posted or whatever. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment below how you think I can improve upon this podcast already. I already have some ideas about how I'm going to improve it, like having face cam and stuff like that and doing other live podcasts and whatnot. So just comment below how you think I can improve this, and I'll see you next week, or you'll listen to me anyway next week.